Hello YouTube! In today's video I want to discuss the lore of one of the most interesting and dangerous characters in Dark Souls. Alabaster Eradicator of the Untrained, Translucent Shadow of the Night, Pasty Invader of Noobs, Swift and Deadly. Today we are discussing the lore of the Pale Man. A lot of speculation has been proffered while discussing the lore of this character, but today I will try to analyze all of the evidence that we have regarding this character and see if we can uncover his true origins. But in order to unveil his true story, the first thing we need to analyze is his gear. Now yes, it is true, the Pale Man appears in-game sporting a number of different weapons. There are certain staples of his gear that reveal a lot about who he is. The first one is the Dragon Slayer Great Bow. The item description reads, Great Bow used by the Dragon Slayers during the Age of Gods. Far greater in size than any normal bow, and far more devastating. What this first item reveals to us is that the Pale Man has a definite link to the Age of the Gods, and given this weapon was used exclusively by Dragon Slayers, which were very close to the royal family, there is a very real possibility that he actually has direct links to Gwen and the rest of the royal family. This is further confirmed by the fact that the Pale Man utilizes the Sunlight Talisman. The item description reads, The Knight of Sunlight's personal talisman for casting miracles of the gods. The talisman bears the knight's own holy illustration, an emblem of his unwavering faith. Use of the talisman skill fills the user with similar steadfastness. So, after analyzing these two items, the link that the Pale Man has with the gods and the royal family is nigh undeniable. There's also another knight that he has an obvious link with because of the Sunlight Talisman, Knight Solaire of Astora. What were his connections to this beloved knight? Now folks, I'm going to have to draw very heavily from speculation here, as the sources are really limited, but after analyzing all of the lore around this character, I think the following story makes a lot of sense. Now the first thing that we need to analyze is the land of Astora itself. Now every single character that we meet throughout the 3 games that comes from the land of Astora has one thing in common. Andre, Anastasia, Oscar, they all hail from a land that glorifies the linking of the fire, especially the Lord of Sunlight himself, Gwen. There is no character that embodies this better than Solaire, whose only purpose is to find his own son, and who is a clear adherent of praising the Lord of Sunlight. So, Astora is a land devoted to praising Gwen, but why is that? Now I believe that the main reason for this is because Astora was founded or heavily influenced by a member of Gwen's royal family. Another interesting fact is that while it is apparent that the Astorans have a very deep desire of linking the fire, they do not necessarily know the whole story about how that came to be. Now, I very personally think that this would be consistent with a member of Gwen's royal family finding Astora, passing on some of the important elements of the story, and leaving the rest to interpretation by the people of this land. While there are a number of possibilities of what member of the royal family might have influenced Astora, I think there are 2 main possibilities here, and they are Guinevere and Gwens Firstborn. Now, while we know Guinevere did leave Anor Londo before the start of Dark Souls 1, and that is why there is an illusion in there casted by Gwendolyn, I do not believe she is the one. As if she had moved on to Astora after she left Anor Londo, all Astorans would know that the illusion of Guinevere in Anor Londo is that, just an illusion, and would therefore not necessarily pursue her with such fervor. So the obvious choice is of course Gwens Firstborn, also known as the Nameless King. But how does all of this relate to our pale friend? Well, let me tell you the story of how I think all of this happened. We all know that Gwens Firstborn is essentially exiled from Lordran, and even though the timing of his exile is heavily debated, we do not need to delve on that for my theory. So, essentially after Gwens Firstborn is exiled, he starts traveling the world. During his travels, Gwens Firstborn arrives to a quaint little kingdom called Astora. This powerful god is charmed by the beauty of the kingdom and the kindness of its dwellers, and so he decides to help the inhabitants of the kingdom. After witnessing his powers, the citizens of Astora are flabbergasted and decide to make a religion around this new god and his ideals. And although he reveals much of his former home and the Lord of Sunlight himself, the fact that he was exiled from Lordran makes it so that he decides not to reveal the whole story. Originally, our banished god was only planning to pass through this land through his travels, but after being captivated by their way of life, he eventually falls in love with a maiden of this land, with which he sires 2 sons. The firstborn is a strong boy, and even though he doesn't seem to have inherited the godhood from his father, he certainly inherited his indomitable will. This boy is raised with the stories from his father's exploits, but mostly the exploits of the Lord of Sunlight himself and of the Sunlight realm. And even though this little boy's father does not reveal that Gwen is in fact his grandfather, the boy becomes near obsessed with the Lord of Sunlight. The name of this boy is Solaire. Shortly thereafter, the wife of the god becomes pregnant once more. However, due to unknown circumstances, the Nameless King is forced to leave Astora before this pregnancy comes to term. After the Nameless King leaves Astora, the second boy is born, without the presence of his father in his life. The second-born grows up noticing what his father's absence has done to his mother. It is due to this, as well as the sheer annoyance with his older brother going on and on every day about the great Lord Gwyn and the great sun, that the little brother decides that he will not drink that Kool-Aid. Instead, this child grows up completely rejecting the sun ideology, and the only thing that still remains in him that hints to his own upbringing is his reliance on praising the sun. Now, although we do not know the actual name of this child, I believe we do know him as the Pale Man. Now, the older boy, having been taught on the art of war and fighting by his father, becomes quite an adept fighter, and due to their own sibling rivalry, the small child begins training with his brother, and eventually becomes an even more proficient warrior than Solaire. Time passes, and eventually the older brother decides to leave for Lordran in search for the glory and light he heard in all the stories from his father. The youngest boy, unshaken by these silly tales of the sun, decides to stay with his mother and take care of her. However, still pining for the little boy's father, the Pale Man's mother falls to illness and tragically passes away. It is at this moment that the Pale Man forsakes all ideologies. Ages pass, and the Pale Man journeys the different lands of the world, learning diverse techniques and accruing vast amount of experience, until he finally reaches the land of Lothric. Once he arrives to Lothric, the Pale Man eventually learns about the Pale Shades, the assassination arm of the Sable Church of Londor. The Pale Shades are not only master assassins, but shrewd combatants, well versed in many styles. And after identifying with them through their paleness, our silver-skinned friend goes to train under these fighters. Training under these skilled warriors, the Pale Man accrues even more knowledge of the arts of killing. But more importantly, he finds an ideology to latch onto. Let's take a look at the Pale Shade set. Attire worn by those who kill in the name of the Sable Church of Londor. The pale shades of the Sable Church are all undying hollows, giving rise to much fear and contempt. Their fight is one of neither honor nor exaltation, yielding nothing but withered moans. So, after he receives the wealth of knowledge from the Pale Shades, the Pale Man leaves the organization, not only with all of his training, but with a new mantra to live by. My fight is one of neither honor nor exaltation, yielding nothing but withered moans. And the rest, boys and girls, the rest is history. Through history, we are all bound by the shackles of our lineage, and throughout our lives, we all have but one decision to make: if we will live our lives abiding by that lineage, or if we will forsake that lineage to tread our own way, finding our own path to live by. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed the lore of this Pale Destroyer of Noobs. I had a lot of fun making this video and coming up with all these speculations. Now, just in case you're wondering what's going on here and you don't know what I'm talking about, I suggest you go to Lost My Sanity's channel. You should sub to him, because he's pretty awesome, to be honest, and take a look around. You'll know everything you need to know about the Pale Man in short. As always, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this kind of more fun lore videos, just let me know in the comment section and I might make more of these. If you enjoy this kind of content, you should consider subscribing to the channel. I put out videos pretty much every week, except something happens in my personal life and I'm not able to. Thank you guys for watching. This is Cheps, and I will see you soon.